and we'll just get started. So, hi everybody, my name's Sara Freid. I am a technical support specialist here at JMC.
And I'm Matt Berlin. I'm a developer here at JMC.
And we've been working together throughout this whole project to bring you this fantastic feature that we are excited to show you. So we're going to just keep on rolling through here. So why are we here today? So our goal for this session is to introduce you to the new web-based form designer. Woohoo! Crowd applause, yay! This isn't going to be an in-depth look at the form designer, but it's going to be an introduction. There's plenty of trainings to other trainings that we'll have that you can sign up with me, or videos and resources that you'll be able to use to get more in-depth training. This is a good introduction for you. If you have any questions along the way, please don't hesitate to ask. We're going to be typing in. And the features we're going to review are a form designer overview, just getting started in it, creating forms, editing forms, and doing shortcuts. So we actually have some spaces in between each section that we're going to stop for a quick breath, and you can type in questions along the way. You can use the Q&A chat feature in your webinar toolbar.
It's going to be down at the bottom of your screen. It has a little Q and an A on it. So if you just press that, that's going to open up a window where you can type in a question, and one of us will either answer you via text or we'll read it live in the webinar session.
Or if you just want to say hi to Matt, you can chat that way too. So the web form designer. So the web form designer is now in our JMC Office application, and it is, I believe, the easiest to use ever. You can now access, edit, create forms right inside your web browser. You don't need to have any additional information or applications. You don't have to go outside anywhere. You don't have to have your tech coordinator set anything up. It is right in your web, your web browser. And why would your school use this designer? It can be used to create and edit elementary standards and benchmarks-based report cards, student information forms, absent and tardy letters, and custom report cards will be coming soon. So many people say, well, where do I find this awesome tool? It is found in your JMC Office application by just clicking Form Design on the left-hand side. Now, a very important tip would be to use the web form designer successfully. You will need a good internet connection. Just like if you want to use the web browser for anything successfully, you want to have a good internet connection. Because this is based on the web, you need to have that internet connection. I cannot stress that enough. Some of the things that you can do with this new web form design is you will have all of your existing forms that were created in the other form designer. They're all still there, so you'll have access to all of those. You can add images, such as your school logo or each student's photo. You can edit and design the form to your liking for a completely customized look just for your school. And I will also, and edit forms from any computer with access to the JMC Office app. I will say that I have seen some schools already dive into this web form design and have created some really spectacular standards and benchmarks report cards. That's what I mostly work with, but with their logos on there and school photos, and it looks really great. So this is going to be a snapshot of what you're going to see when you go into the form design screen. You are going to find the form design menu item on the left, right over here. Can you see my hand? Oh yeah, you can see my, sorry. The form design menu items over here. There you're going to have fields and placeholders are located right here. And some new fields include that image. We have height and weight. And for standards benchmarks, we have a benchmark grid that you can add onto your form.
And also test scores now too.
And also test scores. Woohoo! The list of current forms are found in this upper right drop-down menu. You can use those forms as templates to make new forms, or you can just start with a blank form. And don't forget this cool undo button over here. And there's a save button on this right over here on this side. So you can save as you go and undo if you goof, which I do. I was going to say I never goof, but that's a lie. That would be a lie. So getting started in the Form Designer, if you want to create standards and benchmarks report cards, you need to set up your definitions in the office first, and that's going to be under standards and benchmarks definitions over here. I think a lot of you guys have used standards and benchmarks, so probably pretty familiar with that area. If you want to create student information forms, you want to set up any custom fields that your school may want under File and Define Custom Fields over here. And that all of those custom fields you can use in that student information form. And if you want to create attendance and tardy letters, there is no setup in the office. You can just have at it. So let's take a look. Hold on one moment. All right, thanks. This whole webinar thing is new for me, so thanks for your patience in this. I can help out individually as much as people need, but this is all new.
You're doing great, Sarah.
Thanks, Emily. So we're going to log in and see what this form design actually looks like in real time. And yes, for you detail-oriented people, this does say 2018, 2019. Don't worry about that. I'm just a year behind. Okay, so this is where you're going to find everything. So the form design menu item is right over here. And for the sake of just using an example, we're going to do standards and benchmarks report cards. But all of these fields over here, most of these fields will translate to the other forms also. Just going to give you kind of an overview of this though. This is where our forms are found in this drop-down menu up here. This is our save button, our undo button. We've got new forms up here. And then this is where all of our fields are found. All right. So we're going to go to the next. There we go. We're going to see if there's any questions on just the just kind of the overview of this form designer.
The lay of the land.
The lay of the land. Matt, any questions coming in, or should I just keep on rolling?
No, we don't have any. Just a client-specific question right now.
Fantastic. So we'll just keep going. All right. So I think a lot of people are interested in how to actually create forms. So you can get into the form design feature, but you need to know how we're going to actually create forms. Well, creating forms in JMC is as easy as 1, 2, 3. So we're going to select a new form up on the top here. We select the size and page orientation over here. And we can select a blank form and enter a name, or you can select an existing form and enter a new name. And then you simply drag and drop all of these placeholders. So these are fields over here. You drag and drop those right onto the screen. And some of my favorite items to note are, once again, this whole fields list. It's really comprehensive. There's a save button. There's an undo button for those of us who need to just go back a couple steps. There's zoom buttons. There's plus and minus over here for folks that need glasses, such as myself sometimes. I need to zoom way up and I can see it really well. There's also an info button right here for keyboard shortcuts.
There is one question in here, and I just want to make sure that everybody understands this. Eric had asked the question again, does it import the forms from the desktop version? Yes, all of your current forms will automatically be in the web-based version. So there's no regeneration. They're already there from your old desktop version of the software.
Thanks, Matt. And so here's an example of a standards and benchmarks-based card. Schools that already, there we go. Well, took care of that first one right there. Schools that already have used the standards and benchmarks report cards already have them in their system. With the web form designer, you can add attendance in a ready-made grid. You can add benchmarks in using a benchmark grid, and it will auto-fill them for you. And you can add logos and photos using the image library link. Now, this is a cool iPad photo that we have in stock here. So if you need assistance, once again, if you need assistance creating forms, just please let me know and I can guide you through the process with a more in-depth webinar. And let's take a look at this one. Great. All right. So I'm going to go through some of those buttons and how they are used. So once again, we would go into form design, standards and benchmarks, report cards. Here we get this big screen right here. So some of how this will work is these right here are all fields that are placeholders that bring information from the rest of the program. We'll bring that information specific to the student that you're printing on this form. These three items up here are things that are going to be stationary. They're the same things no matter who you print. They will stay the same. So it's a text box, a line, and a rectangle. So student name, teacher name, and then the student name would show up over here. The title, the header, the grade 6 report card. Anything that's a text box is going to stay the same no matter what student you print for. The undo button, let's do something on here so that we can kind of see. So I'm going to bring this over here, bring a name, the last name here, and we're going to put an advisor. Advisor name in here. So I could either click save, I can say, ooh, I didn't, you know what, I got the wrong one. I have wait up here instead of the advisor. Shoot, I can undo it and it will take that off for me. Instead of having to mess around and try to click whatever you've done. You can also, so I'm going to save this. You can also create a new form by clicking on new form, selecting the form template. You can do a blank form. If you just want to complete a blank form, you will have to enter a name. We'll save that, and it's going to give you a blank form.
Yeah, and Sarah, if you want to go ahead and pull that back up, I just had a question on this from one of the attendees. If you don't have anything in that templates area, so when you click on new form, if it just says blank form there, that means that there is actually no forms created yet in your database. The templates, those are just forms that you already have, and we're just copying them into a brand new one for you, is essentially what it's doing. So if there's nothing listed other than a blank one, that just means that right now your school hasn't created any forms yet. So you'd have to choose the blank form and type in a new name to begin that process of creating new forms. Once you've created one form, if you'd like to duplicate that to other grade levels, you'd be able to then do that also by choosing the template.
So like I did right there, I can choose webinar form 1 and I'll change it to webinar form, we're going to say grade 2. And we can save that. And then now we have the form that we're working on up here. It's going to be webinar form grade 2. And I could go ahead and then edit in here.
That's correct.
Great. Some of the other things that you can use that, well, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here, Matt. So the other things that we can do for, if you are creating a new form, I'm just going to select a blank form real quick and show how to drag some of these things. Oh, sorry here. to show you how to drag some of these things over, because it's different to see an actual form with an attendance box and benchmarks and stuff like that on there, but it's different to actually start from scratch. So when you have this, we can drag over text boxes and type in there, and this would be student name, for example. And then we can go down, we're gonna grab an attendance grid down here. Here, we'll drive this over here, and it automatically fills it in for you. If we have, for example, on this standards and benchmarks report card, if we wanted to bring in a benchmark grid, we could select language arts here, and we could save, and it's going to autofill all of the language arts benchmarks on here with the benchmark results. You might have to go back in and kind of tweak some of these, like this one right here. Is it going to be long enough to show all the words? So we would be able to change the size on that one by using this little gray arrow on the bottom and by changing the size. Okay. So I think that we are good to get started. So like I said before, the main thing is that you're going to go up to new form. To create a new form, you need a new form. You can either do a blank form, or you can select a template from the forms that you've already have created in your system, and you can create a new form off of that one. Okay. All right. Any questions about that, about creating a new form in JMC with the form designer? All right, we're going to keep going then. So now we're going to talk about editing forms. So we know how to create a new form, a new blank form, or a new form from a template. But how do we edit forms? We edit forms by first selecting the form from the drop-down menu, whichever one you want to be working on. All of the same tools that we've chatted about can be utilized in editing the forms, as well as in creating the new forms. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about a little bit more in depth about some of these other tools that I skipped ahead on from the creating the forms. And you can make as many changes as you want, as many times as you want. That's the great thing about having it in the web browser. It's super easy to just go in and change real quick and pop back out. And I would suggest that you want to make sure you're editing the form that you want to be adjusting. The name of that form that you're going to be working on is going to be in this panel. You don't want to just start and open up that form designer and start on the first form you have, because that might not be the form that you want to be editing. So make sure that title is the one that you want to be working with. So a few things to know on this. There's a lot of great tools here. So once again, if you're editing, you can drag any of these items onto those forms. And just to let you know, these items over here on the left and how they work on this form are the same as they will be for the student info forms, which includes the attendance and tardy forms, and will be the same for the custom report cards, which will be coming soon. So we're just showing you in this standards and benchmarks module part of it. So once these items get dragged onto the form, you can resize them, you can move them around, and you can edit what they say. You can select an item by clicking on it. You relocate it by dragging it. You can align an item, and you can so you can align items on your left. You can align items to the right. You can align items to the top, and you can align items to the bottom. You can resize items, and I'm going to show you that live. So I'm just going to kind of go quickly through these. You can delete an item just by selecting on it, clicking it, and then pushing backspace. And you can edit an item for text box by double clicking in there and typing a different thing in there. You can also format the actual text and size of the box by right-clicking on the box, and you see this big contextual menu. I think that that is most easiest just showing you right on this form. So we're going to go to a different form just because there's a lot of stuff that I can show. Great. Okay, so within here, I'm going to go through that list of tools so that we know what we can do with those. So once again, any of these things over here, we can just drag and drop onto here. Once we have them on here, it's going to be, the red is going to signify that it is selected. And then if you want to do something with it, if it has this little gray arrow down here, it means that it is resizable at that point. So this arrow that you see right on my screen right now, the double-headed arrow, is the one that means that you are going to be resizing it. You can also move it, but you don't want to move it with this arrow. You want to move it with the arrow that's actually just the one-headed arrow. You can also change the formatting of this by right-clicking on this box, and you get this box here that you give the font. You can change the style of the font, the size of the font, alignment, if there's a frame, and you can also change the size, the actual height and weight of that box by typing directly into here. I know the desktop application, you always had to look at the width and height down here in these pixel grids. But this time, you can literally just tell the selection what height you want and what width you want, and it moves it for you. You can align a bunch of items also. I'm going to do this. We still have time to do a couple more instances. So these are misaligned here. So I'm going to push Control right arrow, and it's going to align them all on the right-hand side of the selections. And then I can just move the whole selection over as I want to with my arrows. You can multi-select items by clicking on something, hold down the Control key, and click on whichever ones you want. And then you can do things with that whole chunk of selection at a time.
Yeah, like an example there would be if you wanted to change the font on a whole group of things, you could either do the Control click like Sarah was just showing you. Also, you can use the marquee, which is where, Sarah, if you click and hold your mouse down to the right, you can select a group of items. And then if she wanted to, let's say, change the font, she can right-click, and now she can come in here and change the font, either the actual font or the size or whatever font information there that she wants to change. That will then change it for that entire group that she currently has selected.
Great. You can also delete items, as in this. You just select it once again, push backspace, and it will delete. And any other tricks of the little fun things on this that we would need to in order to be able to create this form here?
Tricks. I'm just trying to think. Well, the alignment, I think Sarah was showing you that too. Not only can you change the size of an item, you can also change the left and top position too. In the past, it used to be that you always had to, move it with the mouse to get to an exact pixel location. Now, when you right-click, you can actually type in the actual left position, so you can make sure that everything is exactly lined up on the left-hand side, or exactly in the top position if you want those items to be. Those are kind of the key new features that we have there.
And along with that, I would also say that, for example, this, if you wanted to change the height of all of these, you would once again right-click. There we go. And I'm going to just change that to 15 there. And that's going to change this whole selection to 15. So it's a really great tool to keep everything at the same, the same heights and widths and stuff. So one other thing that I'll show you too before moving on, a couple things actually. We've got an image. We have an image logo here, an image field that you can bring over, and it's going to ask you. It's going to say no image available. And these are logos or images that we uploaded to our image library. So over here is an image library. It's a quick link. And this is where you would go out to your computer and upload a picture that you could use for your report cards. So this is a great space to put your school logo, for example. Or if you have student info forms, we have towels down here that if you have to buy towels for Phi-Ed, or your iPad, you put the deposit down for your iPad, you can use those in those different forms. So what I would do is I would double click on this, and I can go to my tree logo, for example. Now, we recommend that if you do this, you say save, and as it's thinking, click save on that, and it will pop in there. Matt, why did you want to explain that one?
If it's a really large image, it may not load it right on the screen right away. You have to hit the save button to make sure that image is loaded. If it's a simple logo or something like that, it will display immediately.
Great, thank you. And the only other thing that I wanted to show then on this screen is that, you know what? Nope, I'll show it with the shortcut. Sorry, everybody. All right. So I'm going to toggle back here. And do we have any questions about editing forms?
We have one person asking if there's a spell checker built in. There is not per se a complete spell checker built in. The one thing I will say is if you're using Google Chrome, when you type something in, if it is misspelled, it is going to highlight it on the screen with or not highlight, but underline that item. And to give you a tip that it's misspelled, if you right-click on it, it will give you a suggestion then of what the correct spelling should be for that word. But you know, per se, we don't really have it built directly into GNC.
Good question. Another one that math or no?
There's a question about entering in scores in grading area. All of those, the forms that you're designing here are essentially just a template. Those scores are all going to be driven by the teacher's grade book. So in the teacher's grade book, they have the standards and benchmarks area where they would type in the actual result for those different benchmark areas. So what you're building here is just the placeholder for those grades that the teachers are sending.
I'm going to show a few shortcuts then too, and then we have a chance to do some questions at the end also. This is our last section here. So there's some keyboard shortcuts that we have included for this form designer, so you don't have to remember absolutely everything on how to do things. And it saves you a lot of time. It's right there. So this little blue I button is the information button, I call it. It'll give you a list of keyboard shortcuts. And they can save time by just reminding you how to multi-select items, how to change font style position of a group or a single item. And it shows you how to duplicate items down and to the right. And I'm going to show you how to do that also right after this screen here. So that you're not recreating the wheel every time that you have to, you don't have to drag things every single time from that left-hand field list. And then also the Alt-click sets items to the back, because when you add things onto the form, it's kind of like it's a layered kind of, a layering of items on the form. So if you are clicking on something and like a text box and it has a rectangle over it, and you can't get into to change that text, oftentimes it's because that rectangle is considered the item on top. So then you use an Alt click to set that rectangle to the back, and then you can click on that text box. So let's take a look at that also. Okay, so here is the here's that information button right up here on the top, and those shortcut keys. As you get familiar with this with this form design, I would love to take suggestions as to if there's any other shortcut keys that you find would be helpful, or little notes that we could pop in there to help remember certain items. So that is our that's where you can find that. If you're just like, oh, I know this, I just can't remember which key it was, that's where you'll find it up in that blue I button. And then I'm going to show you how to duplicate them, because once again, it's super, especially on these standards and benchmarks report cards or on the custom report cards, bringing over benchmarks and benchmark results and changing each individual box size is kind of a pain. So it's not even kind of a pain, it's a lot of a pain. So the duplication really helps that out. So what happens here is that if you select this benchmark down here, I'm going to actually delete this one. So if I select this benchmark right here, and I do a Control-D for duplicate down, it's going to duplicate to the next benchmark that's within this standard. So this standard was science over here. So it duplicated to the next benchmark in that standard of science, and it duplicates all of this information for the next standard. Now, the duplicate right duplicates information for this one benchmark, but to the next grading term. Thank you, Matt. So it stays on that benchmark, but moves to the next grading term. So duplicate down duplicates all the information to the next benchmark, and duplicate to the right will duplicate to the next grading term. I think that's
the same thing will happen also with the attendance areas. If you did not use our attendance grid that we have predefined, and you actually drag over the items yourself onto the screen, when you do the duplicate right, it's also going to duplicate to the next attendance term.
Because we can, like that. And we can duplicate to the right, and it's going to go to quarter 2. Great. This also applies to course grades and text boxes. Although text boxes obviously won't go to, it just duplicates the text box, but it duplicates it either to the right or down. Great. Okay. There we go. That is, do we have any questions now about keyboard shortcuts, editing forms?
Yeah, we've actually got a couple. So one of them is copying and pasting from other documents. You can do this. I just want to make sure that you're careful on that. If you copy from a web page, a lot of times you're going to get some artifacts that come over in that text with it. If you're copying from like Word or something like that, as long as it's the same font that we have available in JMC, that will also work. The one thing that I might recommend doing is that you actually copy and paste it into like a notepad or just a regular straight text editor before you paste it into the box in JMC. Those other pieces of the software have proprietary font settings, so we're actually copying and pasting exactly what they're giving us from their program, which not all the time can be used in JMC because it's specific to Microsoft or to a web page. So you may get a goofy little box or something on the screen. If that happens, you can just simply double click on it and remove that then from the screen. But you can do some copying and pasting. I would maybe recommend that you paste it into Notepad first and then paste it into JMC to make sure that it has stripped out any extra encoding characters that JMC doesn't know what to do with. One of the other questions that we got is, where does an administrator go to give them privileges to use the form designer? That's a good question. There's actually a couple different privileges. If the person is going to be editing standards and benchmarks, the office administrator would have to go to File, Application Security, and make sure that that user that they're trying to give access to has read-write access to standards and benchmarks. If they do not have that access, they are not going to be able to edit those forms and for standards and benchmarks. If you're doing the student info form, I believe they just need to have read-write access to general student data. If they have those permissions, then they will be able to get into the form designer. If they do not have the permissions, it's going to come up with a red line at the top saying that you currently do not have permissions. Okay, we have a person here asking how to delete an item from the screen. That is simply done by just clicking on the item, and Sarah, I think, is going to pull it up right now. And what you do is just press the delete key or backspace key on your keyboard, and that will then delete the item from the screen. Now again, Sarah, if you made a mistake and deleted the wrong item, you should be able to hit the undo button, and it will then put those back in whatever you had just last done in the transaction.
Speaking of deleting that, I would like to say this button delete form we didn't really talk about, but I should let you know, please don't click on that because that is going to delete it. It's not going to put it in your trash on your desktop. It's going to delete whatever form you have up. So please be careful and make sure that you do indeed want to delete the form when you click on delete.
Yeah, at some point we may want to move that box. Some of the people that have started using this have accidentally clicked that when they're trying to create a new form, and they think they're duplicating the form that they're working on, and they're accidentally deleting the form. So that's a good point that you made, Sarah, is that that button there, it is going to permanently delete that form. So just make sure that that's really what you want to do. If that happens, you can contact our support team, and we can usually reload those from a backup to the accidentally delete form.
I have a question there. Can I talk about it there? I'm not sure. So we have a question that says, when you make a report card in the format that you want, there's no way to pull in the grades, etc., into it. I'm going to answer this in a couple different ways. When you make that report card in the format into the format that you want, those grades get pulled in through either course grades or standards and benchmarks. So that is, like Matt was saying before, you're making for the report card side of it, the standards and benchmarks report card or the custom report cards, those are a template that, like, it's a placeholder, and depending on those kids, those grades are going to come in according to the teachers who have sent in the grades, if they have or not, and that. But there's not, in the form design, you're not going to see any grades in there because it is the template and the placeholder. And currently, we have another question that, can we add items from the student list choices, such as custom fields or home language, etc.? I'm assuming that is maybe adding that onto the standards and benchmarks report cards, or no? Yeah. And currently, in our standards and benchmarks report cards, this is the list that you will have. So for custom fields, and all that information, there's a bunch of other information that you can have in the student info lists. That would have to be put onto a request and added at some point.
Or they could actually create a student info form and then print that, attach it with their standards and benchmark report card.
Absolutely, because you can attach, when you do print these standards and benchmarks report cards, you can attach on the PDF. That's a little bit more detailed about standards and benchmarks and not the form design. Okay, so thank you so much for listening to our introduction to this web form design. Like I said, there's other training options for a more in-depth training because we have limited time during the day for the webinar. We have a certain amount of time. So our upcoming webinar schedule is going to be on the November 20th is Help Within JMC is coming soon, and November 27th is no webinar scheduled because it's Happy Turkey Day. But you can, the December weekly webinar schedule will be up by the end of the day today. So keep your eyes out for that. And then we also have other ways to keep in contact with JMC. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. These are our addresses for both of those. We welcome feedback and we welcome comments. And thank you for joining our webinar today.
Thank you. And I'm just going to hang out here just for a few more minutes on the question and answer thing too. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to send them in. I will try to answer as many of those as I can. Otherwise, if there are questions, they can go to our tech support. Otherwise, you can contact Sarah also on that too.
And my email is Sara, S-A-R-A, @jmcinc.com. Thanks, everybody.